Welcome back to Transcendentalism Time on the Romanticism Network. As we continue to go through Ralph Waldo Emerson's Nature, we now bring in three experts to help us analyze the seventh chapter titled Spirit. The first of these experts is Blaise Doyle. Mr. Doyle, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Cobbett.
So, do you want to take us through the beginning of Spirit?
Absolutely. So, Emerson begins the chapter by first talking about the theory of nature and man. He states that the theory must not be retrospective, but instead progressive. He reminds the reader that man keeps exhausting the same facts, yet we do not have all the facts. All of nature, when summed into one, is infinite, meaning infinite things to study.
Infinite as in endless?
You got it. This is also where Emerson states the first time nature is faithful to its origin, the spirit. Now the next paragraph is small, yet contains a biblical allusion. Nature is dedicated to the spirit. Like the figure of Jesus, she stands with blended hand and hands folded upon the breast. Now, you might be thinking, what the hell does that mean? Nature is dedicated to the spirit like Jesus was dedicated to his faith. Because like Jesus is both human and divine, and both his human and divine parts are interconnected, being connected with his divine origin, the nature and spirit are interconnected as nature is faithful to its divine origin.
A little confusing, but the message is pretty clear.
Exactly. And by learning from nature how to worship or be one with the universe, we can achieve transcendence. Now, in the next paragraph, Emerson admits we can't describe the spirit accurately in words, because it's the spirit. When it comes to describing him, the spirit or God, we are as helpless as fools and savages.
Note the use of the simile there.
Very good, Mr. Host. Now, may I continue? God's spirit is so beyond thought that we can't comprehend or describe it. But when we worship intellectually or reflect and reason on the spirit, we come to see nature as an apparition or image of God. And God, or the universal spirit, speaks to the individual through nature to lead him back to the union with the spirit or oversoul. In short, the less you say about the spirit, the more you know.
Actually, quote Mr. Doyle. But as Emerson says, is the whole idea of man considered within the spirit?
Thank you for reminding me that it has not yet been all considered. So nature causes us to ask, what is matter? Emerson answers that questions in terms of idealism, but for you guys to understand, we have to explain what idealism is. Idealism is a philosophical idea that says something mental, like an example would be the mind, is the foundation of reality. And the mind recognizes that there is a universe separate from the mind, but we can't access it until we truly know ourselves. So idealism says matter is a phenomenon or perception. Matter is not actually a substance. Idealism gives us the idea that there is a disconnection between our own being and the evidence of the world's being. In other words, nature's being is perfect, and we just aren't. The world is a divine dream, just a perception, and idealism tries to explain nature without science being involved.
Idealism seems pretty legit.
Indeed, but there was a problem with it for Emerson. It takes God out of the equation. By taking God out of the equation, we turn into wanderers with no point in life, because by denying the spirit, we deny our point in life, which is to become reconnected with the spirit and become transcendent. This also denies Emerson's definition of nature, because spirit is the origin of nature, and it denies ourselves, since we also come from the spirit and are sustained by nature.
If I am not wrong, I believe Emerson talks about how this theory denies our consanguinity or kinship with nature.
Precisely. Now, Emerson reminds us to keep in mind, or apprise, the hypothesis that matter is a phenomenon, and there is a distinction between the soul and the world. And I believe my time is up, so...
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Next guest coming on will be Zachary Goodman to finish the analysis of Chapter 7. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So, would you like to just start off where Blaise finished?
Sure. Okay. So, Blaise left off giving an excellent description of Emerson's meaning of the term matter. But when we ponder matter, Emerson says many truths arise from our conscience. Now to explain this, we will use an analogy. In Miss Turpak's Religion 12 class, she taught us how there is truth. In facts, and capital T truth, which is the absolute truth for a religion, but not necessarily factual. An example being the creation stories. Comparative to nature, Emerson is talking about capital T truth, but in terms of our conscience, how when we ponder matter, we come across capital T truths that are innately true to us, but not always factual or having hard evidence.
Excellent use of analogies there.
Thank you, Mr. Host, thank you. So, to continue, I will talk more about the Spirit. Spirit is a universal essence that all things derive from. It is present in nature, and Spirit is the supreme being.
Zach, can you delve into this a little further? And what exactly does this mean?
Well, everything includes us, and nature was formed by the Spirit, and this all comes back to the idea that we can unlock a resonance within the divine or a state of transcendence, where as a human you are one with the Spirit. Emerson uses this simile as the life of the tree puts forth new branches and leaves through the pores of the old. As a plant upon the earth, so a man rests upon the bosom of God. He is nourished by unfailing fountains and draws, at his need, inexhaustible power. To explain this concept, when one reaches transcendence, there are no bounds. One has access to the mind of the Creator.
So how do humans exactly differ from nature?
Nature is the perfect incarnation of the Spirit, and is not, as Emerson states, subjected to the human will. Humans cannot ruin nature. Humans differ from nature as we have free will and are not completely connected with the Spirit. A factual example Emerson uses to support this theory when he states, "The fox and the deer run away from us. The bear and the tiger rend us. We do not know the uses of more than a few plants, as corn and the apple, the potato and the vine." This exemplifies that nature is inherently distant from us because we are not fully connected with the Spirit. Deer will run from us because we are not one with the Spirit, and therefore nature. We are essentially broken away from God.
Well, that definitely clears some things up. But how does Emerson close this chapter of his essay? How does he tie all of these ideas up coherently?
Well, let's bring in the next expert to find out.
We're done with Blaise Doyle, but we're not. Welcome back to the show, Blaise Doyle.
Mr. Host, it's a pleasure, as always.
So you told me before we got on the show you would explain to all our viewers out there what God, man, and nature had all in common.
So, as Emerson puts, the origin of nature is the Spirit, and man is made from the Spirit. So therefore, man and nature are connected with both having the divine power of God. Nature is perfect because it does come from God, but man has not achieved transcendence yet. Man has not become fully aware of themselves, and therefore is not perfect yet, even though they are made in the perfect image of God. So therefore, just to wrap it up, nature is from the Spirit, man is from the Spirit, so man and nature are together. Everything is interconnected, and that, Mr. Host, is transcendentalism.
Oh, thank you very much.
My pleasure. All right, we're good.
We have one final guest today on the show. Welcome, Noah Spees.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. Glad to be here.
That's good. So, do you want to describe Chapter 7 of Ralph Waldo Emerson's essay titled Nature?
Of course. So, Chapter 7 to his essay Nature really surrounds the Spirit and what he boils down to as the oversoul and God's role in creating nature. So he equates what he refers to as the Spirit with God. And because those two beings are existentially perfect, without flaw, and they created nature, then nature is also perfect. Ultimately, nature is defined as being separate from us when he talks about matter, and how basically matter is everything around us in our physical world aside from ourselves. So in this, Emerson's saying that we were originally once part of nature because God created us and God created nature, so we must all have been one at some point. However, we managed to separate ourselves from that. And achieving transcendence, the entire purpose of it is to reconnect ourselves with nature, reconnect ourselves with God and the Spirit to unlock our internal perfection. So that's really the main point of what he's trying to get at through chapter 7.
Well, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah, for sure. It was a pleasure to be here.